We'll get those live feds zipped and clipped, strap down those rods, and stow away those tackle bags because we are going fishing. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Bass to Anglers podcast. I'm your host, Keith Nicewanger, and I hope this episode finds you with 5 for 25 in your live well. Excuse me. It appears we have a group text message here from our president, President Henry of our Bass Club. Attention all members of the Lehebra Bass Smashers. Member Keith has self-reported receiving information from his brother that there is an epic crankbait bite up at the lake. Because he received this information, he's been disqualified from this weekend's event. Furthermore, because he told Bubba about the epic crankbait bite up at the lake, Bubba has also been disqualified for receiving information during the off-limits period. Well, there it is. I guess now it's official. Besides being responsible for opening up the world of shallow water fishing, Gary Klein also introduced us to the world of ultralight deep water structure fishing. Excuse me. Another text message. Attention all members of the Lehebra Bass Smashers. Because all of you received the group text message about the hot crankbait bite up at the lake, you've all received information during the off-limits period. Therefore, the entire club has been disqualified from this weekend's tournament, and the tournament has been canceled. Reason number 15 why your next boat should be a Camus. Our high-speed live well pickup. Fish mortality is a big deal on today's tournament trails. Introducing Camus's high-speed live well pickup. Now you can take great relief knowing that as you fly down the lake, your precious cargo will be getting fresh water to make sure they are healthy for the weigh-in scales. Build your next boat by going to camusboats.com. Besides being responsible for opening our eyes to the potential of shallow water, ultra shallow water bass fishing, Gary Klein also introduced us to the world of ultralight fishing on deep water structure using electronics, I might add. Just about the time that everyone was starting to pound the bank in search of ultra shallow fish, Klein began winning tournaments offshore using spinning rods and ultralight line. Once again, the bass fishing world would have to catch up to him. Here's a story of how he learned to fish ultralight line and ultra small baits in deep water structure using electronics. I think you're going to like this also.
Over the years, not only was I close to D. Thomas, but one of my first bass clubs I was ever involved in was the Green Machines, the San Diego club. And, that was Mike Folkestad.
Right.
And the whole group of guys down there, we competed a bunch, but Mike was the angler. I called him Mikey when I was growing up, but Mike taught me how to fish offshore. Mike taught me how to read electronics. D taught me how to read the bank and understand a competitive field of anglers. So Mike was offshore, D was on the bank, and there's another gentleman that I met when I was 15 that happened to live in Orville, and that's Rich Forehand. And Rich Forehand was somebody that really intrigued me because working at the marina every day, I was a bass fisherman, and there was very few of us back then. But Richard was on the lake all the time in his little aluminum boat, 20 horse Mercury on it. And he was a spinning rod fisherman, and he always caught the fire out of smallmouth. Orville used to have a really good population of smallmouth. So I really got to spend a lot of time with Richard, became very close with Richard and his family. And Richard and I spent a lot of time on the water, but Richard taught me how to fish a spinning rod and 6-pound test line. D taught me how to fish the bank with a long rod, and Mike Folkestad taught me how to read offshore cover, with my flash or with my electronics. So I was kind of at the very young age of being introduced to all aspects of angling. And I was just intrigued with it. Having the opportunity to fish with Mike on Lake Powell, Lake Mojave, Mead, Havasu. Clear Lake might come up and spend a lot of time with me fishing Clear Lake. And of course, he set the records at Clear Lake. So yeah, I was very fortunate to have the knowledge presented to me.
Now, so about the time that that flipping was blowing up back east, and everybody was starting to do it and hit the banks heavy like that, you suddenly back off the bank and start catching fish in deep water, your shallow water routes, and you win a couple of BASS events on finesse techniques. That had to really blow everybody's minds because here's a shallow water guy, and where is he catching him? What he's using? It's like the opposite, a 6-pound test line from what you're doing with flipping. That all came from your work with Mike Folkstead.
Well, it came from a combination of 3 individuals. My light line fishing came from Rich Forehand, who basically taught me how to fish 6-pound test line on a spinning rod. Folkstead helped me understand offshore structure and how fish relate by using electronics. And of course, I was very close to Don Ivino for quite a few years.
Oh, yeah.
And Don developed his own method of fishing 6-pound test line with, little hand-poured worms. We called it the doodling technique. And I had the opportunity, because I had that experience of fishing a spinning rod, when I observed the current conditions on some of the BASS events, it was amazing. For example, just a real quick story. I was actually rooming with Rick Klein, and I want to say it was 1988 on Bull Shoals. It was late October. Bull Shoals reminds me of a lake just like Lake Shasta. It was about 35 foot vertical down. The water was pristine and clean. But normally on a man-made reservoir in the fall, I always look for shad migrations up creek channels. So at noon, I was crankbaits in the back of some creek channels. I never had a bite. I drove back to the launch ramp, got my 3 spinning rods, my little box of doodle worms, and from noon until dark, I started fishing 35 to 60 foot. When I came in that night, Klein asked me, he said, "Well, how'd your day go?" And I said, "Well, it was pretty interesting once I got on to what was going on." He goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "I probably had 60 bites." And he said, "BS." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, I only had 1 bite." And Ricky and I didn't talk a lot of fishing when we were together. So that next afternoon, now I had a pattern. And I ran it all day the second day of practice. And Ricky said, "Okay, Smarty, how many bites did you get today?" And I said, "Ricky, I probably had over 100. And he goes, "There's no way." And I go, "Ricky, they're deep. They're 30 to 60. And it became very obvious to me that I told Ricky, I said, "I'll win this event if I don't beat myself." And I was the only angler in the BASS field in 1988 on Bull Shoals to weigh a limit all 3 days.
Wow.
And I won that event. And then everybody out there, all the anglers I competed against kind of labeled it as sissy fishing.
Right.
Fish with a sissy rod.
Yeah.
But yet, it was a way to catch fish when they're offshore and deep. And of course, it's like I said, our anglers that compete at this level are very passionate anglers. They're very good at adapting. And it wasn't long after that everybody started, not only do they own a flip stick, but now they also have spinning rods in their boats.
Yep.
And I think just about maybe every angler that competes at our level, except for Klein, owns spinning rods. Ricky's still that hard-headed. He very rarely ever fishes a spinning rod.
Well, Gary, and the tours now all make a northern swing, which puts those smallmouth really in play. And you got to be able to fish that finesse stuff up there for those.
There's 2 things that really have taken place over the last few years. Obviously the light line, but also the development of some of the Berkeley products, the Max Scent, the Gulp.
Yep.
Smallmouth are really, really nuts over that stuff. And our electronics. Our electronics, of course, I've been Lowrance from the very beginning, but they've really, really stepped up their game. And now we have our active target, which is a forward imaging. So I can actually watch the fish react to my lures. So all this technology doesn't mean you're going to catch any more fish. But what it does, it's another tool that allows an angler that wants to put forth a little bit of study time, the opportunity to basically look at fishing in a different way.
I'm Keith Neiswanger. This is the Bass to Anglers podcast. Please remember to like and subscribe. If you'd like to reach us, please send us a direct message on Instagram at Bass Tour Anglers Podcast. Take care. Be safe. We'll talk to you next time.